Think of that. Remove tens of thousands of illegal alien gang members, drug dealers, murderers, child predators, human traffickers, fraudsters, and savage criminals.
Iran's surface fleet is gone, and somehow Washington is more nervous right now than the week before those strikes started. Sit with that for a second. Most of the fleet has been burning since the end of February. U.S. Central Command has been releasing footage of warships listing, breaking apart, sinking. By early March, Bloomberg was reporting that Iran had been left with almost nothing above the waterline. So why are the people running this operation not celebrating? Because they know something the headlines haven't caught up to yet. Something is still down there, and it already proved what it can do. According to reports tied to the competitor coverage of this incident, a U.S. cargo vessel, the Liberty Pride, was reportedly struck while transiting the Strait of Hormuz. No warning shot, no radio contact, no surface signature. The crew reportedly felt a violent jolt through the hull before anyone on board or in the region's maritime security network fully understood what had just happened. And here's the part that sent a chill through Washington. The weapon that allegedly hit that ship never appeared on sonar. It came from beneath, from something that had reportedly been waiting on the seabed, completely silent, for up to 48 hours before it moved. That detail right there is the entire story, not the strike itself, the weight. What allegedly carried out that attack is called the Ghadir-class midget submarine, and its DNA traces directly to North Korea. Around 2004, according to analysts and open-source defense reporting, Pyongyang quietly transferred the design of its Yodo-class submarine to Tehran. Iran studied it, modified it, and started producing its own variant. At roughly 120 tons submerged, it's barely larger than a city transit bus. Small crew, decent electric propulsion, minimal acoustic output, and built for exactly one tactical purpose: get close without being detected, then strike before anyone can respond. On paper, that sounds simple. In practice, it is one of the most difficult problems in modern naval warfare. And if you think that's an exaggeration, the world already has a case study from 2010 that proves it isn't. On March 26, 2010, the South Korean warship ROKS Chonan split violently in half and sank in the Yellow Sea. 46 sailors died. A full multinational investigation later concluded the cause was a heavyweight torpedo fired by a North Korean Yono-class submarine, the same class that Iran's Ghadir was modeled on. No radar contact, no sonar trace before the impact. The submarine closed its position, launched, and vanished back into the water. Iran reportedly studied every detail of that attack. They have spent 16 years since refining their own fleet and their own tactics. And the tactic that military analysts say they've developed is what makes the Liberty Pride incident so alarming. They call it hibernation. Here's how it reportedly works. When a Ghadir wants to disappear, it shuts everything down. Main propulsion off, non-essential electronics offline. The vessel descends slowly and settles flat on the seabed. In that state, it produces an acoustic signature that is, for practical purposes, indistinguishable from background noise. The Persian Gulf averages only about 50 meters in depth, making it a near-perfect environment for this tactic. The seabed is scattered with old shipwrecks and metal debris from decades of heavy industrial traffic. Meanwhile, massive commercial tankers and freighters pass continuously overhead, their engines and propellers flooding the water with constant noise. The dormant Ghadir sitting among that clutter looks to conventional sonar like every other piece of cold metal at the bottom. The weapon isn't speed. The weapon is patience. But that patience only works because of where it's being deployed, and that geography is Iran's single greatest tactical advantage in this conflict. The Strait of Hormuz narrows to just 21 miles at its tightest point. The designated shipping lanes inside it are only 2 miles wide in each direction. Through those lanes, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, roughly 20% of the world's daily crude oil moves. The water is shallow, temperature layering is severe, oil platforms and coastal structures create a wall of acoustic interference and the seabed is irregular enough to scatter sonar returns in unpredictable ways. Larger American submarines, the kind that dominate open ocean operations, are functionally limited in the shallowest zones. The Ghadir was engineered for those exact zones. Its tiny displacement, its ability to lie dormant, and the background chaos of one of the busiest waterways on Earth combine to give it a structural edge that no tonnage advantage can simply override. Iran's coastal bases are also within striking distance of the main shipping choke point, which means a Ghadir can sortie, reach its ambush position, and hibernate before U.S. tracking assets even register it as a threat. And the threat isn't limited to torpedoes. That's where the picture gets significantly more dangerous. The Ghadir's primary strike capability includes the Hoot supercavitating torpedo, which reportedly travels at around 370 kilometers per hour by generating a gas bubble around its body that nearly eliminates water drag. At that speed, conventional evasion maneuvers are largely ineffective. But in 2019, Iranian state media announced something that changed the threat assessment entirely. A successful test fire of the JAS anti-ship cruise missile reportedly launched from a Ghadir-class platform. A torpedo requires the submarine to close within a relatively short range, accepting some level of exposure. A cruise missile can be fired from a much greater standoff distance, keeping the platform concealed while the missile tracks its target independently. That is a fundamentally different tactical problem. Add the Ghadir's reported capability for covert mine laying, Iran's total mine stockpile is estimated by analysts at between 2,000 and 6,000 units, and its alleged ability to insert IRGC combat divers for sabotage operations, and what began as a limited asymmetric weapon has become a multi-role threat that U.S. planners are treating with considerable seriousness. Which brings us back to what happened after the Liberty Pride was reportedly struck, because the U.S. response was not what most people expected. According to the competitor analysis of this incident, after the initial alert and identification of the submarine's acoustic trace, U.S. commanders authorized a precision strike. Not a broadside, not a carrier wing, a single guided weapon reportedly designed to cripple the submarine rather than destroy it outright. The thinking behind that decision is strategically important. A destroyed submarine carries nothing recoverable. A crippled one, brought to the surface off Iran's own coastal country line, forces a terrible set of choices on Tehran. According to reported details, the submarine was hit, disabled, and forced to surface relatively close to Iranian territorial waters. The U.S. reportedly then held its position just outside Iran's coastal danger zone, making clear what had happened without triggering a broader military exchange. Iran's reported response was constrained. According to available accounts, there was electronic interference and some communication disruption, no missile retaliation, no wire escalation. The strike had reportedly been calibrated precisely to sit below the threshold that would compel Iran to respond at scale. That's not restraint from weakness, that's a message delivered in a language that leaves no ambiguity about capability while still allowing the other side to absorb the loss without being forced to react. But here's the part most analysis misses. The decision to cripple rather than destroy placed Iran in a no-win situation that has nothing to do with military hardware. If Tehran tows that submarine to port, the vessel is reportedly out of action for months, potentially longer, given that international sanctions have severely complicated Iran's access to the replacement components needed for repairs. If they leave it where it surfaced, U.S. naval intelligence reportedly has the opportunity to exploit the vessel's systems, its sonar equipment, its communications architecture, and its propulsion data. Either outcome represents a strategic loss. The submarine is neutralized. Its technology is either unavailable to Iran or available to everyone who isn't Iran. That's the real message embedded in the precision strike decision, and it was reportedly understood clearly in Tehran. Now, what makes this more than a single isolated incident is the broader shift in how the U.S. is approaching anti-submarine warfare in this environment. Traditional passive sonar, listening for sound, is functionally limited in the acoustic chaos of the Persian Gulf. The response to that limitation has been an accelerated push towards non-acoustic detection. The Navy's Magneto program uses AI-enhanced magnetic anomaly detection to locate submarines not through sound, but through the distortion their steel hull creates in the Earth's magnetic field. A submarine that shuts everything down and lies completely still on the seabed cannot stop being a large metal object. Magneto is reportedly designed to find it regardless. Lockheed Martin has already been integrating digital MAD sensors into MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, expanding airborne detection capability across exactly the shallow, cluttered conditions that define the Persian Gulf environment. Alongside that, the U.S. has been advancing blue-green laser LiDAR, a system that fires pulses of light through seawater to detect shapes and masses below the surface. Unlike most electromagnetic signals, blue-green wavelengths penetrate saltwater at depths sufficient to outline objects that don't match their surroundings. A Ghadir lying motionless among old wreckage still has a mass, a geometry, a profile that separates it from scattered scrap metal. Algorithms trained on that distinction are reportedly being deployed on unmanned systems that now patrol the Gulf continuously. On January 25, 2026, the U.S. also quietly admitted more than 20 submarines are reportedly still out there. The USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike groups are operating in or near waters where those vessels are believed to be active. A successful strike on a carrier would not be a tactical event contained to a box on a military map. It would be one of the most consequential moments in decades of American power projection, a signal to every state actor watching that the tools of asymmetric warfare can reach even the most heavily protected targets in the world. Iran's commanders reportedly understand this calculus. The Ghadir fleet may be all that remains of their conventional naval capability at this point, but in the current operational environment, one well-executed strike could rewrite the strategic picture in ways that no amount of surface fleet destruction fully compensates for. The surface war is producing the images, burning ships, broken docks, satellite photos of damaged naval installations, but the real contest, the one with the higher stakes and the less predictable outcome, is happening below the surface of a waterway that most people couldn't point to on a map. The question that no official spokesperson is going to answer publicly, the one being debated right now in classified settings, is whether U.S. forces can locate and neutralize every one of those remaining Ghadir submarines before any single one of them gets close enough to a carrier to use what it's carrying. The smoke above the water is clearing. What's happening beneath it is still very much unresolved. Drop a comment below. Do you think the U.S. has already tracked most of the remaining Ghadir fleet? Or is there at least one out there that no one has found yet?